Thanks, Jerry. So my name is Josh Bullock. I'm a librarian at the University of Kansas, and I'm presenting with Dr. Bader Aboukader, who will introduce himself in a moment, and then get us kicked off. And the plan here is to just acknowledge that there are a bunch of platforms and they're a part of the landscape, and that can be sort of dizzying. And so what we're trying to do is introduce you to Bader's experience as someone sort of coming into the landscape and how platforms figure into that, and then some of the major platforms in a broad overview sense. And then with the time remaining, we'll demo some of them, and hopefully that will leave time for questions along the way and or at the end, and we'll try to answer questions in the chat as they come up. So Bader, do you want to introduce yourself and run with it?
Yes, my name is Bader Aboukader. I'm a math instructor at Fort Hays State University. I have a master's in math from Western Illinois and one in education from Fort Hays State University. I'm a student at Kansas State University going for curriculum and instruction PhD program. I'm interested in the open education resources adoption. I'm new to this, and I have been introduced for the first time by Josh and Claire Nickerson in 2018, as you will see in a second. Every 3 to 5 years, the general education math faculty at Fort Hays State University, we go over a book or textbook cycle where we review the outcome and assess the use and try to find a good quality textbook. We try to keep it up to date, especially with the examples and so forth. We also consider the students' affordability and the ease of use and for the software, the tech support, the learned concepts across the curriculum, and so forth. 4 years ago, I have been offered to develop an online liberal art math class, and then later on changed to contemporary math. So I was in the market for a textbook for that particular course. In 2018, I attended a seminar about open education resources, was hosted at Fort Hays State University by Claire Dickerson, our librarian, and Josh was one of the speakers over there. He introduced the Open Text College Algebra textbook, and this was the first time I see a hard copy of an open source textbook. I had the chance to review the book, and we got actually paid for that. And the only obstacle I was looking for was to go and look for a book that matched with my contemporary math textbook, that contemporary math class that I was trying to develop. Going to OpenStack's website, I found out that they don't have a specifically contemporary or liberal art math class or discrete math for our course. So I decided at that time to use the pre-calculus book for a course I was already teaching for a year, and we offer it on campus every fall, which was the pre-calculus course. So I used their pre-calculus OpenStack textbook. And the second problem was finding software that is accessible and free to use. And I wasn't really familiar with a lot of software beside the one commercially used, like the one we used to use in person and in Hawk's system, like my MATLAB or Hawk's learning system. So going through their website, I found a rover. I found that they have a lot of allies. One of them was rover homework system, and I used that instead of person. It costs around $25 to $30, and I'm using it for a couple years now, teaching the pre-calculus. So I am now in the market for a free software, and I found one for pre-calculus as well. I'm using it now for contemporary math. So to find that free software, actually, I attended a webinar by Dr. Andrew Bennett from Kansas State University in 2021. He used that my open math software, so I found out that he integrated it in the Canvas system they have over there as an LMS. And I really liked what I seen. He using it for calculus and differential equations. So I thought we can use it for math general education classes. I tried more at that time to learn about the free homework, and through that, I used also the teaching and innovation department to help me integrate that my open math inside, as you will see later on in the demo, inside the Blackboard. I am also doing qualitative and quantitative research on the perspective faculty about the OER use in the classrooms. And also I want to see the results for on the students and the teachers learning and teaching experience using the OER. I found out in my own experience that it is not easy task to use right away to switch. It's gonna have a lot of time. You have to spend a lot of time and dedication to spend preparing for your classes. The course usually in open education resources is not like a package you have in a commercial package they give you when the students pay for the textbook and the homework system. It's also gonna have a lot of your personal behavior inside using the OER, and there's a lot of factors and reasons to implement OER inside your classroom. There are like 6 factors usually mentioned over here, from external to internal, for implementing OER in your classroom. One of the most important one is the volition, as that's your desire as an educator to use OER and spend time and motivate sometimes to use the OER. Then there is the availability and the capacity and the awareness, which is very important. And that's how I was exposed to OER to start with. Then there's the awareness and the permission and the access. Through using the OpenStax, the OpenStax itself, there were some difficulties. The OpenStax itself, the package included with the OpenStax are really not like the commercial use, as I mentioned earlier. You need to spend time to modify the material and make your own exams, your own lesson plans, your own assessments, your own activities. And sometimes this is a good thing because every semester you have different students, so you have to modify the contents for them. The Rover homework system, as you will see later on, it is really a good system and they have a lot of advantages, but also there are some drawbacks. One of them is a slow server, and there's really not 24/7 customer support, as most of the commercial homework system nowadays, offer for their users. Integrating in the LMS is not a piece of cake. You really need some technical help from the administrator of your LMS, because he's gonna put this together for you the way you want it. Because I noticed from using the operating system that the other LMS that you can implement some stuff and you can like leave alone some stuff. So this brings more technical issues and you need help with that part. Now, one of the obvious advantage is the financial saving for the students, as Mark Faber mentioned in the opening for this summer, that the students usually save $600 a semester. So the saving through 4 years is going to be more than $4,000 to $5,000, around that range, if we assume that the students is going to average 4 years at the school. So the financial matters really matters for the students. Also, it gives me the lead part in integrating open education resources in our department, and I think this word of mouth spreading help moving everything toward OER toward the end. And we have now the computer department is trying to implement the OER in their the first couple of classes, computer 1 and computer 2. It helped me also create some surveys and conduct some qualitative study research, interviews, and observation for our other colleagues who are not really enthusiastic about using OER in the classroom. I was able to connect with other colleagues, especially librarians, and I also connected with a couple colleagues from other departments, so from different disciplines. It made me also look for other resources and change my pedagogies depending on these resources or depending on the audience I have in my classroom. Back to you,
Thanks,
Josh.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Bader. So platforms are an important part of the open education landscape, and they fulfill a number of purposes, and those purposes can often overlap. So, for example, OER Commons, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes and look at later, is a discovery and search platform, but it can also support creation, hosting, and to a certain extent, collaboration. So, platforms often address known barriers to the increased use of OER. For example, they might consider metadata and its role in discovery, and they might have some sort of rating system permitting users to post reviews or comments and to read what has already been said about a rated work. As I said in the intro, it's not feasible to cover every platform, nor to explore them exhaustively. So what we'll do here is present an overview of several of the major platforms, and then we can demo some of them to get a better sense of their functionality. Next slide, Bader. Uh, the one more back.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So this is the open textbook library, and that's the first platform I always think of. It's a project of the Open Education Network, which Tara this morning mentioned that KBOR, the steering committee, got KBOR a system membership, so we get to benefit from being a part of that community. That's based at the University of Minnesota. It's a membership organization, but the use of the site, this site, the OTL, and the resources hosted there is not limited to membership. It's on the open web, so anyone who can access the stuff is free to use it. It's a directory of nearly 1,000 open textbooks, which meet four basic criteria. They have to have an open license that permits derivatives. They must be complete and downloadable that's for bandwidth and sort of technology and Wi-Fi availability purposes. They want users to have the ability to use them offline. Um, they must be original, so not derivatives unless there are substantial changes that have been made from the source work. And they have to be the fourth criteria. They have to be in use at multiple higher education institutions or affiliated with a higher education institution, a scholarly society, or a professional organization. The OTL can be browsed by subject or searched through a simple keyword search, that search bar that you can see on the slide. Um, each record includes basic information about the item, often reviews by instructional faculty. About 2/3 of the books in the library have been reviewed by somewhere around 75 or 100 of them contributed by our colleagues in Kansas who attended the review workshops that Tara mentioned this morning. Um, the it's a referatory, so it doesn't host the resources themselves, but it links to them wherever they are. They do have a dark archive of backups, in case something disappears off the internet, they can then host it. Um, if you're looking for book level things, this is a great place to start. And if you've created a resource that fits those four criteria, it's a great place to have your work indexed because this is a key platform. Next slide, Bader. So this is OER Commons, which is a search, hosting, creation, and to some extent collaboration platform. They have some group functionality that's supported by a nonprofit organization called ISKME, which is the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management and Education. It's been around for 20 years. Um, the scope of this platform spans subject educational level from K-12 through graduate or professional level, various educational standards. It hosts a wide range of formats, not like the OTL is a textbook focused um, platform, whereas the OER Commons hosts everything from modules to courses. So the basic search tool has several facets, as you can see on the slide, and advanced search has many more. Once you're in the results, they can be filtered by a number of facets, and they have a star system. The resources have a star system, and many of them have been rated, and many of them have not. Um, Unlike the Open Textbook Library, this contains openly licensed objects in any format, so that includes things like videos and games, for example, and in any scope. So from singular lesson plans and exercises all the way up to textbooks and entire courses. OER Commons can also be used to add OER, as the green button in the upper sort of center right um, suggests, and that author tool, they call it Open Author, can be used either to author directly in the platform by uploading documents and descriptive information about them, or by providing um, or linking. You can add a resource by providing a link to it and then providing some descriptive information. Next slide, Bader. There are two great what are called meta search engines that I frequently use and recommend for finding OER. The first one is the Mason OER Meta Finder, which they use the acronym MOM. That's an so this is an OER search engine that's based at George Mason University in Virginia. The search is pretty capable. Like, as a librarian, this looks a lot more like database style searching, as opposed to the open textbook library is just a single search bar, right? Keyword search. Um, these results can be filtered by a number of facets, either from the beginning of the search or once you're in the result. Um, the this the Mason MetaFinder searches across there's two columns there on the right. OER specific platforms, including the Open Textbook Library and OER Commons, OpenStax. Like there's some familiar and unfamiliar names there. But then the right hand column is other relevant sites that include like things that are in the public domain or otherwise openly licensed and therefore fit the definition of OER. So that includes like HathiTrust and the Digital Public Library of America, and that helps to identify open content and permit. So these are, you can individually turn the search of any of these off and on. You can click them or unclick them to expose the search to those platforms. Um, and because of the broad search that it's doing, that's going to turn up everything from granular exercises to textbooks to entire courses. This is a great resource for searching broadly, including across the OTL and the OER Commons. So if you don't find something in the OTL and you need to expand a search, this is a good tool for doing that. The next slide, Bader. So this is the second meta search engine, and I don't think of either one of these as being better or worse than the other. They're both useful. It's based at SUNY Geneseo, called Oasis. This has both basic and advanced search functions, as well as browsing capabilities. There are almost 500,000 records from over 100 sources, including some of the ones we've already discussed. Like, again, they use the resources in the OER Commons and in the Open Textbook Library and other sites. The search results can be filtered by a number of facets. This is another good one-stop starting point for broad searching that can be subsequently narrowed. I like both of these because they're nonprofits based in the academy rather than commercial services built on OER, and I think that suggests better alignment with our educational context and goals. Next slide, Bader. So this is changing gear a little bit. Pressbooks is a simple book publishing platform that's based on WordPress. So that makes it pretty simple to learn and use for non-programmers. So if you've ever used a WordPress to create a blog or a site, you're already familiar with the Pressbooks functionality. There are self-hosted versions of this where like your institution could host the infrastructure on its servers and use the tool, make the tool available to you. Um, and there's a supported or hosted version, that's the pressbooks.com version. And then in the hosted version, individuals can license the tool for a single book cost for $20 or $99. There's some different functionality that's enabled by the higher level sort of version of that, but you don't have to have a special membership like it or be housed at any particular institution to use it. But institutions can support the use of it at their institution through they have a Pressbooks edu option. So that costs about $5,000 per year, depending on the level. It could be a little more or a little less, which can be a challenge to support, particularly at smaller institutions with less resources. The books that are created in Pressbooks are pretty easy to make accessible. They have sort of baked that into the platform, um, and the end result is uh, the book is hosted on its own website. So using this tool basically creates a website for the content. Um, Downloads are available in multiple formats. It's easy to clone or fork a book. So, for example, if you wanted to work on a second edition while not live editing the first edition, you can make a copy and be editing in that version. And when you're ready to shut the old one down, to switch to the new, or have that marked as V1 and superseded by the new version, or to share a clone with a colleague who's going to create some sort of interesting derivative from it. So that this isn't the only tool that has been used to publish OER. There are others, but I think it's safe to say that it's the most widely embraced. And in my experience, Pressbooks folks have the people at pressbooks.com have been really great to work with. They're very knowledgeable and they're doing a lot of good community building work. So when we switch to the demo, we'll look at an example of a Pressbooks based project. And it's worth noting that while this is an authoring, collaboration, and publishing tool, there is a directory, a Pressbooks directory of all of the public books that are on the network. And that can be another useful source for searching because a lot of open text books are created um, using Pressbooks. Next slide, Bader. So this is LibreText, which is also a hosting and creation tool that started as ChemWiki by Delmar Larson, who's a chemistry professor at UC Davis and is one of the speakers tomorrow. So we probably in the demo, depending on time, won't spend a lot of time here because Delmar is available to answer questions about his platform, and he knows it far better than I do. But um, LibreText was awarded $5 million grant funding in the first round of the Department of Education federal OER funding several years ago, I think 2019. And that supported its development from chemistry into 13 disciplinary libraries. Some of them are meta disciplines, like humanities is a single library that with lots of resources that span the humanities. Um, these the libraries, so they call those divisions, those disciplinary divisions, libraries, and each library contains a campus bookshelf, like institution specific resources, a general bookshelf of books within the platform, as well as maps to create or to replicate existing commercial texts based on their structure, which isn't protected by copyright, um, and learning objects, so standalone items or assessments. Instructors may use an existing text in LibreText as is, or create and modify their own version of a resource that's already in LibreText. But definitely, if you're interested in that, look to Delmar's session tomorrow afternoon. And then the last resource that I wanted to show you, if you'll go to the next slide, is the Open Pedagogy Notebook. So I wanted to look at this one. It's a bit different in the sense that it's about examples of open pedagogy or assignments, which is also sometimes called open educational practices or open enabled pedagogy. And these can be really rewarding classroom experiences for both students and instructors. If you're not familiar with this concept of open pedagogy, there's a great essay by the founders of this site. They're both professors and they sort of interrogate that concept. The short version of what that means is that it's a set of practices enabled by openly licensed content. So what can we do with open content that we can't do with traditional content, and how do we engage students in contributing to the commons as a means of education, as the vehicle for their learning? Examples of this include Wikipedia-based assignments such as authoring or editing articles of relevance to course content, student-created test banks mapped to open textbooks, and student-created videos or podcasts teaching their peers about course topics. And I can speak to examples of both of those during the demo. So if you're interested in this sort of educational potential of open content, rather than merely addressing the sort of cost concerns that students have, and the access potential or access that OER enables, this is a great resource. So I think the next slide is the demo slide, and Bader, you're going to continue screen sharing while you do your demo, and then we're going to switch screen sharing while I demo some of these platforms that I've discussed here.
Great. So I want to show first the OpenStack for the first for the OpenStacks over here, the website for OpenStacks. And this is I signed up with them, and it's for free to sign up. I just want to show you the math topics I used over here. I used the pre-calculus, and you notice that not all the topics is covered here in the math section, but what they have is mostly the math general education classes. And inside it, they have the instructor resources where you can get the material that other instructors used. They can share it with others, and that's where I'm gonna move to. And here you can see a lot of the instructors share their materials and put it for the open to be used with your classes. So this is going to make easier for you if you want PowerPoints or you want videos. There's a lot of videos already put together over here. The second part of it is they have a lot of allies that you can use as a homework system, and you notice that the homework system is between $20 to $40, $50 maximum. So it is an inexpensive way to use a homework software with a textbook. Now I am moving away from what I used earlier for the couple years, which is Rover, because it still costs the students almost $25, $26. So I'm moving on to an open, totally free source, which is my Open Math. And my Open Math, when I started first, I noticed that first of all, to be in my Open Math, you have to send an email for the owner, for the administrator of the learning management system over here, and they will email you back in 1 day to 2 days with the ability to access. The only thing they need is to verify that you are an educator. Now, once they give you the access, you can add you can explore the classes over here, and you can add new courses depending on the courses they have already, or you can create your own. So you can see over here, you can explore depending on the topic. If you want algebra, intermediate algebra, pre-calculus, calculus, liberal arts, statistics, and so forth. The interesting thing about here, what I noticed, that it is itself as a learning management system. So you can put all your class inside the system itself. So you can just give the student an access code, they can get in, and it's for free. Now, because we have already in our school a learning management system, I didn't want to do that. I just want to use their homework system. And that's exactly what I did in the Blackboard. I can show you how I just integrated the homework system. I didn't use their exams. I didn't use their activities. I just used their homework system. Everything else I built up inside my Blackboard. I built up the exams. I built up the discussion boards. I built up everything. And the second thing I used from them was the book, because if you remember in my presentation, I said my OpenStax didn't have a contemporary math book. So I used their book, but I didn't use it fully neither. I just cherry picked what I need for my class. And to show you the final product of the class, inside the Blackboard, how I implemented it. So inside the class, you can see the modules. And inside the modules, I implemented for example, inside the sets, I implemented the required reading set they need. And it is basically the OER book that the students use inside it. And it's exactly the book they need. So they don't need to buy the books or or carry the whole book. They just carry the material they need to study at that time. Then I implemented also the videos they included in that in one of the on one of the shells they had. And also then I implemented the exercises sets so they can access the homework system from here, and they can do all the exams, all the homework over here. They don't need to go to that shell. They keep in the Blackboard, and this is very important for me. Then I implemented my own discussion board, and I implemented also my own exams inside the modulus. So I give them an exam in every couple modules. I give them an exam, and the exam is going to cover using the exam is using honor lock for proctoring. And this was for an online meetings, but for my face-to-face students, I give them paper exams in the classroom. That's about it, Josh. Back to you. And I will stop sharing so Josh can take over.
Great, thanks, Bader. Let me get set up here. So, share. Okay, so you should be seeing the open textbook library. Um, You'll notice that the Open Textbook Library is hosted on the University of Minnesota website because that's where the Open Education Network is hosted. They're celebrating, the OTL is celebrating 10 years of existence. And when I started doing this work in about 2015, when I came to KU, there were about 200 books in the Open Textbook Library, and now you can see that there are almost 1,000 books.
But Amy, could you go over to Logan and
Is
get a picture?
um, is
Water.
someone asking me to do something? I think, okay. I hear someone talking, but I think to someone else. Um, so just to give you a sense of functionality, I want to do a search for public speaking. And here, this first book has 56 reviews, which is a lot. But if this is what a record basically looks like. There's a table of contents. We can see a summary of the review, the star rating system, the year it was produced. This book has an ISBN. It was published by University of Minnesota Libraries. It's available in a number of formats. I happen to know that this one is based in Pressbooks. So like this is an example of what a Pressbooks created resource looks like, but we can look at that if we have time in more detail. You can see these reviews trend very good, and the reviews include the name of the reviewer, their title, and their institution and when the review was authored. About 100 of the reviews in the OTL work have been contributed by our colleagues in Kansas. There is a browse functionality. I find this drop-down menu frustrating, so it's better to click to get to this page where you have a little more control over it. And you see there are the different categories. I was interested to find um, this Romeo and Juliet, which is the play itself, which is in the public domain, and then educational resources for teachers and lesson plans where the creators of this have cultivated resources to make it easier to teach instead of having to assign commercial production of that classic Shakespeare play. And the couple reviews that are here look like they're really good. If you look, you can learn more about the reviews, what the criteria are and what they mean by them, and you can also click to read the full reviews. Some of the reviews are single sentences and don't provide a ton of detail, and some of them are long paragraphs that provide a lot of detail. What I try to tell people in creating reviews is to provide enough information to give a disciplinary peer a sense of what of the resource, like, and their evaluation of it. There is this submit window here where, as a creator of an open textbook, or if any, you don't have to contribute your own book. If you become aware of a book and think it should be included in the open textbook library, you can let them know that it exists. And these are the 4 criteria that I mentioned earlier. Moving on, just because we're relatively short on time, here is the OER Commons. There's the basic or advanced search. There's the add OER button here where you can open work in their tool, or just submit a resource from the web by adding a link to it. Whoops, I don't know where that, I was making a PayPal donation apparently. So let's do a search for genetics. And that returns 790 results. We might refine those by subject area in the life sciences, by education level, college upper division, and by, say, material type, uh, textbook. And so that curates this down to a list of 14 resources. To get a sense, like here, there's the star system, though this resource hasn't yet been reviewed. There's an overview and so the basic metadata about the book. Sometimes there are endorsements by different organizations. Here, the OER Commons itself, as well as the Open Textbook Library. And if we click out and look at the resource, here's another Pressbooks example. Since we're looking at a Pressbooks example, maybe it makes sense to look at one in a little more detail. So this is an example of what the landing page for them looks like. This is Be Credible, Information Literacy for Journalism and Public Relations Advertising and Marketing Students by Professor Peter Bobkowski in the KU School of Journalism, and my former colleague, she's left KU and is a librarian in Colorado now, but Karna Younger, they collaborated together on this resource. And you can see the license for it, various download options, but if you continue scrolling down, they've got the table of contents enabled here, and you can click anywhere into the book from anywhere in the book. Like, it's easy to navigate the book either linearly or non-linearly. They've got text and headers and learning objectives. One of the things that I wanted to show you is embedded videos. So it's easy for the creator to host videos in the platform. And one of the things that Peter and Karna worked on are peer tutorials that are created throughout the book. So this is an example of an open pedagogy project where the assignment for the students were to create videos that introduced concepts that were important in their course and in the resource that then became embedded. And of course, in the demo, something always goes wrong. So that's for some reason saying that the video is unavailable. But here's another one that is these 2 students, Katie Andrew and Grace Levins, who are providing, as their assignment, are talking about how to be credible, because that is what the resource is about. So I think we're 2 minutes from the end, and maybe that's not enough time to dip into these others. And Bader and I talked about and knew that that was a possibility that we may not get to all of these. But if there's questions, I'm happy to answer what I can in the remaining couple minutes.
We do have some questions in the chat. One of them's from Carol, and she says, I saw ODF as a platform for book. What is ODF?
Oh, that you saw that as one of the choices in the open textbook library. ODF. Good.
I think it's open education format, open document format.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Open document format. So it must be one of the download options. So yeah, open document. Yeah, so they're listing the various downloads that are enabled by Pressbooks.
Great. WSU Tech General 20 asks, does OTL verify that a book is in use at multiple higher education institutions?
So because that's one of their requirements, I think they do ask the submitter to provide evidence for how it meets that criteria. Like if they can determine it based on a simple search, or like it's obvious based on who the author is and their affiliation with it. It doesn't have to be. It's used at more than one, or created, affiliated with an institution, a society, etc. So like this is the quality check that prevents my uncle's a perfectly nice person, but like it prevents my uncle and any of your uncles from sitting in their basement and writing, things on the internet and then them being included in the open textbook library. But then they depend on the review system by disciplinary peers to provide more context for that. But I think that in some cases it's obvious, and in others they may ask for evidence. When I have submitted books to the OTL, like that were created by colleagues at KU, there's often a little bit of back and forth where they may have questions about how the resource meets their criteria if it's not obvious.
Okay. We do have another question or two. However, we are out of time. And so Josh and Bader, I think, do you have your email addresses on
Yes,
the
good
webpage so
good
that people
call.
can get a hold of you?
Yeah, they're here.
I just
There we go.
typed mine in the chat room.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you all. Very interesting presentation. I took a lot of notes,
Good.
so I hope you all did too.
Yeah, these slides are available and the recording will be available. And if we can answer questions, feel free to reach out.
Terrific. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.